Good evening. Obviously, I'm Sheriff Joe Lombardo with Clark County. This will be one of many press conferences we have provided in order to provide the public information that is occurring. And then, so the sequence of these events tonight, I will provide you some. Can we get some help back there? I will provide you a sequence of some updates of the investigation as we have moved forward since the last time we spoke to you. Any specifics or continuance of any global investigative leads that you need to be aware of. Special Agent Aaron Rouse will provide that information associated with that. Okay? And then subsequently I will return to the podium, assist with some Q&A, and then Commissioner Sislak is available if you have any questions of the Commissioner. And then obviously we have Senator Dean Heller who wish to address the audience also. So, President Trump. I think he was in town today. Yes, he was in town. And the reason why I bring up President Trump is nothing to do, in fact, with President Trump, but to do with the police department. There was some concern because of his visit that investigations associated with this case would be delayed or hindered. And I'm here to assure you none of that occurred. There was a separation of personnel associated with first responders of the Harvest Festival event that took the opportunity to meet with Mr. Trump, and he had the opportunity to congratulate them for their heroic acts. The investigators are directly related to this investigation, both on my department and the FBI, were not part of that. So I want everybody assured there was no hindrance in continuance of the investigation. Return of property. There's a lot of questions going on with that, and I wish I could provide you answers with that. We will try to post on LVMPD.com as soon as we can advise victims when they can receive their personal property. We are still evaluating the crime scene. Until that completes, the property phase will not occur. So the best of my understanding of where we're at, we're looking at 4 to 5 days. So I know that sounds troublesome, but it's important that we dot the I's and cross the T's as far as the evidentiary and possible prosecution in the future. Injuries. Injury number that we are using today, 489. Of that 489, 317 have been discharged from the hospital. So the question is, Sheriff, you provided several different numbers associated with that, all the way up to 527. Now you got to imagine we're dispersed across several hospitals. We're relying on internal communication of the hospitals to provide us accurate numbers. So that's ever changing. And additionally, hospitals receive patients outside of this event. So quite often, or hopefully not quite often, but often, some of those patients were double counted or they were misconstrued as event injuries versus other injuries such as car accidents. So today I'm comfortable in saying the injured number is 489. Deaths still remain at 59. I had told you 59 before, plus 1 being the suspect. That changed. Today it's 58, plus 1, the suspect, 59. And it was the same reason that occurred before, as I explained. So hope you understand that. Nobody wants that number to go up, and by the grace of God, it went down. So that's a good thing. So today I'll provide you some updates on our investigation of the mass shooting Sunday night at Route 91. More than 100 investigators have spent the last 72 hours combing through the life of 64-year-old Stephen Paddock to produce a profile of someone I will call disturbed and dangerous. What we know is Stephen Paddock is a man who spent decades acquiring weapons and ammo and living a secret life, much of which will never be fully understood. He meticulously planned on the worst domestic attack in United States history. As many of you already reported, Paddock rented a room at the Ogden Hotel in downtown Las Vegas. This has been confirmed. Okay? Reasons that ran through Paddock's mind is unknown, but it was directly during the same time as Life is Beautiful. We have recovered evidence from that location. We don't know if it is evidence, but we have recovered items in video evidence. And I don't want to, you know what, I'm using the wrong term. Evidence is not the term. We have recovered video from there to review Mr. Paddock's actions while he was there. Now it's important for you to understand, this was not, the rooms were not rented by the Ogden. It was done through Airbnb by a private owner unknown to the Ogden. So we have very great cooperation from the owners of Life is Beautiful and the Ogden, and they are in full cooperation. Okay, well, we have already spoken to many people who have contacted with Stephen Paddock at hotels and places he frequented. We still have more interviews to conduct. Since Monday, there have been many questions for us to release a timeline, and today we have one. I want to point out the information previously reported on the time of the first shot was based on a CAD report. That's our computer-aided dispatch. That's what we do for calls for service. So that report is dependent on who a particular person calling in and that timestamp. But what we have done through the review of body-worn cameras, we are able to pull it back to previously from 10:08 to 10:05. So Carlos. So I'm going to give you the chance to review that, take photographs of it, and I'll walk you through each timeline. So at 10:05, the first shots fired by the suspect. This was seen on closed-circuit television from the concert venue. 10:12, first two officers arrived on the 31st floor and announced that gunfire is coming from directly above them. 10:15, the last shots were fired from the suspect per body-worn camera. So if you're looking at the math, 10 minutes. 10:17, the first two officers arrive on the 32nd floor. 10:18, security officer tells the LVMPD officers he was shot and gives the exact location of the suspect's room. Now you notice a minute delta there. Before they broadcasted it, obviously they were in a conversation with the security guard immediately upon them exiting the elevators. Between 10:26 and 10:30, 8 additional officers arrived on the 32nd floor and began to move systematically down the hallway, clearing each room and looking for any injured people. They moved this way because no longer hear the gunfire of the active shooter situation. 10:55, 8 officers arrived in the stairwell at the opposite end of the hallway nearest the suspect's room. So when I say nearest the suspect's room, you can imagine the doorway of the hotel room. This stairwell and this door access is approximately 2 to 3 feet away. 11:20, the first breach was set off and officers entered the suspect's room. They observed the suspect down on the ground and also saw a second door that could not be accessed from their position. So it's a suite, and you have a main area of the suite, which is a living room, kitchen, dinette area, and then on opposite ends of that is 2 bedrooms. Okay, so if you do the math on that, all the way up to 11:20 from 10:05, we're looking at 75 minutes. So the young lady here in the front with the red phone, you had mentioned 72 minutes, so now you see where those minutes came from. Okay? At 11:27, the second breach was set off, allowing officers to access the second room, and no one else was located within the hotel room. Okay, these are following extenuating circumstances as to why it may appeared that there was some delay or undue delay in reaching the suspects. Okay, the officers in the first strike team reached this 32nd floor within 12 minutes, which is phenomenal, of the first shot being fired. When the officers arrived and confirmed the location of the suspect's room, the gunfire had stopped. In accordance with their training, officers retrieved a master key card from the injured security guard and began to systematically clear each hotel room. So imagine the elevator bank in the center, 150 feet down on a triplex hotel was the suspect's room. So there's several rooms along the way. Because of no firing was occurring, they could not hear additional firing. They believed it was important to evacuate in case the suspect was barricaded. While the first strike team did this, the second team, made up of 2 K-9 personnel, a SWAT officer, and patrol officers, navigated the numerous stairs wearing heavy tactical gear, carrying a large bag with tactical equipment, and holding rifles in order to have a closer position to the suspect's room. And that is within that stairwell and that doorway adjacent to the room I described previously. They attempted to secure the front doorway of the suspect's room, but as they entered into the hallway, they could see the room service card, and readily apparent on the room service card were cameras. So they pulled back and they waited for the approach of a full SWAT team. Keep in mind, this delay was not undue, it was purposeful, and no shots were being heard by the suspect at this point. Eventually a plan was formulated, entry was made, suspect was seen laying on the ground. They encountered a closed bedroom door which was locked, and they breached that door. Additionally, found no other suspect. Another investigative issue was cameras. Questions was presented about cameras and whether they were recording. We determined none of the cameras were recording. There was 2 cameras on the room service cart out in the hallway. There was one on the peephole of the front door, and additionally there was a baby monitor camera placed in the general family area of the hotel room. None of them were being recorded. One thing I left out was the initial approach, and they looked out in the hallway. When they observed the cameras on the room service cart, it was obviously there was several rounds discharged through the door, and through the blast of the bullets through the door, you could actually see a weapon through those openings in the door, but no suspect was seen. Now, those rounds were the strafing rounds that he put through the door in order to shoot at the security guard. Okay, the other thing I wanted to update you on is the search warrant of the suspect's vehicle located at the Mandalay Bay. I had presented that there was ammonium nitrate recovered, but there were several cases within the car that had not been searched yet at the last briefing I provided with you. So within those cases, there was 10 1-pound containers of tannerite, 2 20-pound containers of tannerite, and approximately 1,600 rounds of ammunition. So tip line, this is an ongoing investigation. We can never not have enough information because we are continuing to run down leads, and it's important for us to get all the information we can on Mr. Paddock, because right now we're trying to prove his intent or understand his intent and the history associated with this, and whether or not he has any accomplices. So we ask people to still call in to 311. If you're out of state, 702-828-311, and then the FBI 1-800 FBI, and that is investigative and also for electronic media. If you're able to call them, they will provide you the ability to download that online into their system.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kevin McMahill. I'm the Undersheriff for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and I am going to be providing you an update this afternoon on the Route 91 Music Festival mass murder. To date, we have run down well more than 1,000 leads in this investigation. While some of it has helped create a better profile into the madness of this suspect, we do not still have a clear motive or reason why. I can assure you that we are aware of all aspects of this case, to include the rumor, innuendo, and supposition by many in the public. And I get it. We all want answers. We have looked at everything, literally, to include the suspect's personal life, any political affiliation, his social behaviors, economic situation, and any particular or potential radicalization that so many have claimed. We're also aware, of course, that ISIS has repeatedly claimed responsibility, which today I can tell you that we have no known nexus to. We have been down each and every single one of these paths trying to determine why, to determine who else may have known of these plans. We will continue to investigate each and every one of these areas, as well as all the tips and leads that continue to come in. We must remain focused solely on truth and fact. It's very easy to assume. We're collectively working with the FBI and many other partners to try to get there. At this time, I'll tell you again that we have no credible information to report to you as to motivation. We will not stop, and we'll keep you up to date as anything develops on that. I will tell you, though, that all of the rumor and speculation has not been helpful to our investigation. In the past, terror attacks or mass murder incidents, motive was made very clear in most of those cases, by a note that was left, by a social media post, by a telephone call that was made, by investigators mining computer data. Today, in our investigation, we don't have any of that uncovered. I wish we did. We will and are continuing to investigate with great tenacity and hope to arrive at an answer. We reported in the media yesterday that we found the missing Hyundai Tucson with Nevada plate 114 Baker 40. It was in the Reno residence that we did a search warrant on. Just a communication issue that we didn't know about it when we reported it to you. Most of you also now know the name of the Mandalay Bay security guard who you've all named in the media, and I'll just reaffirm to you that Jesus Campos is a true hero. I can tell you now just a little bit more that I know about what he did that particular day. We now know that he was dispatched to what they call a door alarm on the 32nd floor. He went up there to investigate the open door, and as he was doing his job diligently, he came under fire by our suspect. As you know, he was struck in the leg. He turned around and retreated. He notified his dispatch, which was absolutely critical to us knowing the location, as well as advising the responding officers as they arrived on that 32nd floor. I can tell you that this was a remarkable effort by a brave and remarkable man. I want to say today that I don't think we've done a good enough job recognizing him and his actions, and for that I apologize. I just want to take the moment and clear the record that he's an absolute hero. There's also a couple of questions that have continued to come in regards to this tannerite and what materials that we had. You all know we've given you this information about where we found the tannerite in the vehicle. Tannerite is a binary explosive, meaning that it's composed of two substances. We also had a significant amount of that tannerite as a finished product, and we had two chemicals of ammonium nitrate and aluminum powder that, when combined, make the finished product of tannerite. Sorry to tell you, I don't know what he was going to do with all of that tannerite. I wish I did, and we continue to try to find that information out. There's a couple of things before I take any questions from you, however. First and foremost is that our partner, Special Agent in Charge, Aaron Rouse, has some information about a new media plan that the FBI has launched, and I would like him to explain exactly what that is. Mr. Rouse?
Thank you, Undersheriff. I'm very pleased to announce that Clear Channel Local here in Las Vegas has partnered with the Metropolitan Police and with the FBI to reach as many people as we possibly can. We're starting an information campaign seeking true knowledge as to what happened in the events leading up to and involving this incident. The billboards will be displayed throughout the Las Vegas area. It will have the badge of the Metropolitan Police and the seal of the FBI on it, along with the terms, if you know something, say something, along with a phone number, which we've agreed will be 1-800-CALL-FBI. This is critical for us. As the Undersheriff mentioned, we have not stopped, we will not stop until we have the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rouse. And next up, I would like to have the Chair of the Clark County Commission, Steve Sisolak, come up and provide you some additional information as well.
Thank you, Undersheriff, and I appreciate you all being here. And in the past 4 days, we've had numerous names assigned to this event, this tragedy. And for official purposes and in the future, after consultation with the coroner, our first report is coming out this afternoon. The official name that which this tragedy will be referred to will be the number 1 October. So the digit 1 October will be the official name listed on all reports and investigations moving forward on this incident. Thank you all very much.
With that, I'll take a couple of questions.
Is there any indication? Can you expand on the misinformation? There's a lot of rumors online, and how that may hinder a proper investigation.
Yeah, listen, I mean, we have a responsibility as law enforcement organizations to run down each and every lead, to debunk them, to determine whether there's any validity to those leads. And so, as I told you, we have a significant number of those. The investigative effort is massive. We continue to do it, but rumor and supposition doesn't help. And so those true tips and leads of things that people know are imperative to this investigation. But just because you think you know something doesn't necessarily mean that you do. If you have factual information that you can provide us in regards to this investigation, it would be helpful to us. Thank you.
I understand that motive is still unclear. However, can you confirm that investigators, while recovering these numerous electronic devices and cameras, they may have recovered a video in which the suspect may have alluded to his motive, or any type of video regarding the shooting?
I'm not aware that we've recovered any such video.
Understood. Have you been able to resolve the question of whether he had any help, or whether there was an accomplice, or can you eliminate the question of whether you are specifically trying to find somebody else?
Okay, the question is, can we confirm whether there's an accomplice or not? I can tell you this: we're very confident that there was not another shooter in that room. What I cannot confirm to you today, and what we continue to investigate, is whether anybody else may have known about this incident before he carried it out. You're going to have to speak up. I'm sorry.
Concerning the question of tannerite, what it's being used for, was there any indication that anything was found in the vehicles to his home, that there was a chance this guy was putting together IEDs with shrapnel, with containers, or anything else like this, or was this just a standardized package that's normally sold?
Right. The question is about the tannerite that we found and whether we believe he was trying to make it into an IED. I can tell you we found it in the condition that it was, and it did not resemble an IED.
I don't know if you guys talked about this or not, but in the video of the Mandel Bay, have you reviewed all that to see if somebody's house came with him, or all those days prior?
The question is, have we reviewed the video from the Mandalay Bay? I can tell you that there's voluminous amounts of video from many different locations. We have reviewed it, and we have not located any other person that we believe to be a suspect at this point.
Was there any indication that someone else used his card key to get into his room while he left the hotel?
The question is do we know that anybody else used a room key for the hotel room, and we do not believe that happened.
Undersheriff, do we know?
Can you comment on whether the shooter had any mental health diagnoses, whether there were reports he's taking Valium or another medication?
The question is about the medical status. That is another aspect of the investigation we're keenly interested in, and we continue to investigate that.
Are you looking at whether he was...
Go ahead, sir.
On the timeline, so the security officer tells you on the timeline that he was shot at 10:18. That's when he tells you he was shot. When was he shot?
I can give you the exact time off the timeline off camera. I don't remember. I don't have it in front of me as we sit here. I'll be clear about the timeline, right? What the sheriff and I have both explained to you at different times is information that we had initially We went back and reconciled it with what was on the body-worn camera as well as what was in our computer-aided dispatch, the CAD data. And so all of that timeline that we represented to you is what we have to the best of our knowledge today. I'm sorry I cut you off, ma'am.
Okay, I was just wondering, are you looking into the question of whether he was kind of obsessed with the month of October since he bought the guns in October and his lawsuit was dismissed in October?
I can tell you that our investigation is focused, I'm sorry, the question is, are we looking specifically at the month of October? The answer to that is we are looking at every aspect from birth to death of this suspect in this case.
So just to go back to the security guard, are you able to tell us what time the alarm went off on the 32nd floor and why it was going off? And is there any, is it at all possible that the security guard was shot before Paddock was firing into the crowd?
So you have a two-part question, is what time did the suspect go up, or I'm sorry, the security officer arrive to check the door and why? The question, or the answer is that the door alarm went off, indicating that the door was ajar. So the officer was dispatched up to check that specific time. We have it. I don't know what it is. And I'm sorry, your second question?
Is it possible that he was shot before Paddock was even firing?
The question is, was the security officer shot before the suspect was shooting into the crowd? The answer to that is yes, we believe he was shot. That we believe that he was shooting into the crowd, and then the security officer was shot during that event. I'm taking two more. Go ahead.
The percentage of injuries, I know we had discussed this earlier. Do we know how many people were actually shot versus the trampling injuries or anything else?
That's a question that you're going to, question is, how many people were shot versus other trampling injuries? As you well know, the number that we continue to look at both for dead and injured, and we still have obviously critically injured people in the hospitals. You notice I'm not giving you a number because that number continues to change every day. People are being discharged from the hospital, and I'll let the coroner answer those questions because he's best provided to give you the information in regards to whether somebody received a gunshot wound or another type of wound.
There's to clarify a report about a key being used, his room key being used when his car was out of the garage. Did that happen?
The question is, was his vehicle being used while his room key? Was his vehicle out of the garage while his room key was being used? I'm not aware of that information, sir, no. Last question.
I thought you might address this at the beginning, so do it at the end. Well, maybe 22,000 people have belongings there. When are they going to get it back? When are they going to, maybe the FBI and Metro can tell us?
Yeah, so we've answered that question a couple of times, Ken, but the question is, when are people going to be able to get their property back? As you can imagine, we have thousands of pieces of property that were left on the field that particular day. We are diligently working to find how it is that we can appropriately document the evidence where it lay and catalog it, collect it, and then find the mechanism to get that back to the people that actually own it. I believe we're still probably about 4 days away from allowing that to happen. And the final thing I'd just like to close out by saying to you that it's really imperative that the listening public have a very clear understanding that there are still a number of people out there that know that something looked out of place. Someone may have been acting suspiciously that night or in the years prior, the months prior. Somebody that may have seen something or knows something, much to like the FBI SAC mentioned. If you know something, you need to say something. Please provide that information to us at that 1-800-CALL-FBI, and we'll continue to update you as this investigation continues. Thank you very much.
Tell us, Mr. Campos,
Much.
tell us, Mr. Campos.
For those of you who may not know, I'm Sheriff Lombardo of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Today I'm going to give you an update where we currently are with the investigation, and then I'll give you some insight to where we're going with the investigation, and then I'll be happy to answer a small number of questions. Okay, so in the days since our last briefing, investigators from the LVMPD, along with many agents from the FBI and ATF, have continued working around the clock on the 1 October shooting. Today I'll provide you with some information, but mostly I hope to clarify or provide more updated information on some of the details that have been reported in the media. A number of you have already reported that the brother of the suspect is in town, and yes, he is. We are in contact with him, along with other family members. I will not discuss what came out of those interviews, but every piece of information we get is one more piece of the puzzle in this case. Last week, we talked about the single person whose action helped pinpoint the location of the suspect, and that was the Mandalay Bay security guard Jesus Campos. As you might imagine, Mr. Campos was not only injured when he was fired upon, as he did his room check about the door alarm down the hall from the suspect's room, but he was also extremely shaken up by what happened to him. He was able to confirm for us exactly what he heard and saw in the moments before he was shot. Mary Lou Danley, the suspect's live-in girlfriend, we are still speaking with Miss Danley about the suspect's movements, gun purchases, and anything else we need to know about him and how he had planned his assault. And who he came in contact with during the planning phase. We have uncovered no evidence to show there was a second shooter. We have uncovered over 200 instances of the suspects traveling throughout Las Vegas, and he has never been seen with anyone else. We have no evidence or intelligence that the suspect was linked or had affiliation with any known terrorist groups or ideologies. In coordination with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, a comprehensive picture is being drawn as to the suspect's mental state, and currently we do not believe there is one particular event in the suspect's life for us to key on. We believe he decided to take the lives he did, and he had a very purposeful plan that he carried out. So where are we at with the property retrieval? As of yesterday, the personal effects of concert goers as well as items that belong to the victims are now being returned at the Family Assistance Center located at the Convention Center. They have located items from lots A, B, C, and D. They have placed them in those categories, and if you go to FBI.gov and click on the banner associated with the 1 October shooting, it will define which lots are being available as we speak. As far as I know from visiting there earlier today, lots A and B are available, and C and D are yet to be determined. First and most important is I want to say the FBI, the Red Cross, and City and County Fire are doing an amazing job. This is not an easy task to undertake, but their process is efficient. And even though we have been talking about the numbers of people who attended the concert and the number of victims injured or killed, you really don't understand the magnitude until you see the rows and tables of personal belongings that left behind as the people fled the venue. So moving forward, we anticipate being at the Route 91 site for at least another week, along with the room at the Mandalay Bay. As I've said from day one, we want to figure out the why to this, and we'd like to know the motive. That is our most important goal, to prevent any further action associated with another individual who is contemplating this, or what exactly went along in the suspect's mind to enable him to pull off such a complicated event. So moving forward, barring any critical information obtained during the week, the next press conference will be conducted at the end of the week Friday. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
There's a deposition that came out today from 2013 that said he was taking Valium. Have you found any medications?
We have found some evidence of medications. I'm not at liberty to discuss that.
Can you tell us about the note? Was that to cause damage? What were those notes?
What note?
The note that was in the suspect's room.
There was not a note in the suspect's room. We recovered a document that had numbers associated to it, and I'm not at liberty to make a guess on what that was for. It could be. We're figuring that out.
Sheriff, also in the suspect's room, according to accounts, we heard last night, there were drills. According to other accounts, the guard, Jesus Campos, heard drilling in the room. What drilling was done and what do you think it was to accomplish?
So the question is, what drilling was done, or what was the intent of the suspect? There was drilling done. It was to the doorway, adjacent wall to the doorway, and just an assumption would be to either place a camera or to place a rifle.
Can I follow that?
But the drilling was not completed.
Did Officer Campos hear drilling?
Yes, he did.
How's Mr. Campos doing? Do you have any information?
Can I finish his question, sir?
And he knocked because of the drilling?
No. There's never been anything out in the public forum about knocking. He was investigating an open door. He became of the drilling sound.
Sheriff, what time exactly did Jesus Campos sustain, the injury? What did the timeline? What time exactly?
Bear with me while I get that for you. Well, it's fairly simple for me to obtain. What was the question, ma'am?
Can I also ask, in the days?
What was the original question?
What time he got sustained the injury?
21:59. That would be 9:59.
Sheriff,
that the gunman was practicing shooting before this incident that you know of?
No, I can't confirm that.
Sheriff, are you saying that, Sheriff, are you saying that the security guard was injured, Mr. Campos was injured before 10 p.m. and the shots were then fired at 10 p.m. into the crowd? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I don't know where you're getting your numbers, but you are correct. He was injured prior to the mass volley of shooting.
So to follow that, he's shot at just about 10 o'clock. The shots into the crowd begin at 10:05 and go on for, we said at one point 11 minutes, but 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
So can you give us what you think?
Okay, I don't want to get in. I appreciate what you're saying, Ken.
Receipts that have been obtained from the valet security system.
Ma'am, that's not how we conduct this service, okay?
It says that he checked
If
in
I'm
on the
presented
25th,
with a
that the
question,
timeline changed? Because the FBI has reported that he
that's
checked
not
in on
how
the
I
28th.
conduct press conferences,
Well,
ma'am.
has the official timeline changed? Because
Please
this
stop
happened-
asking your question. There's a decorum that we have here, and I will finish Mr. Ritter's question.
Thank you. So if Officer Campos or security guard Campos was shot at just before 10 o'clock, and the shots out the window, as you described them, there were
So let me help you with that, Ken, because you picked up on it. Yes, the timeline associated with the original shot and Mr. Campos has changed through investigation, as I have conveyed to you from the very beginning. And your zest for information and my zest to ensure the public safety and the calming of their minds is some things are going to change. Now, they are minute changes, okay? There's not this all-encompassing answer associated with the information that we presented before. In other words, it's not completely inaccurate. But what we have learned is Mr. Campos was encountered by the suspect prior to his shooting to the outside world. Yes, ma'am.
Sheriff, you referenced the comprehension profile that's being drawn up. Can you talk about what threads your department is looking at regarding the shooter's mental condition and how important that is to your investigation?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean by thread.
Like what avenues are you guys going down looking at his mental?
Well, as you can imagine, anything that any mental health or medical help he's had throughout his life, we're attempting to obtain any and all information associated with that. Additionally, the behavioral analysis unit from the FBI is on the ground here locally, and we're attempting to utilize their expertise in discerning those matters. What I will provide with you is behavioral analysis is in LA also, Los Angeles, while interviews with Ms. Danley are being conducted.
Do you have any idea why Mr. Campos was near that room when he got shot prior to the actual?
Yes, we had an alarm associated with an open door. It was not the suspect's open door, it was another one. Yes.
Were there any other writings discovered in the room, either numbers or otherwise?
I'm not aware of any. I personally am not aware of any.
Sheriff, are there any diagnoses that he had that you can share? Anything about his? You talked the medical thing as part of the investigation. Is there anything he was diagnosed with or was taking that you can comment on?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Was he diagnosed with any conditions or was he taking any?
No, we don't have a complete comprehensive evaluation of his mental condition. We will provide that as we become aware of it.
Sir, so after Mr. Campos was shot, before the mass shooting happened, did he alert security? Do they know? I'm just wondering if there's was any delay in his reporting? Or
No, he immediately upon being injured notified security of his situation. In close proximity of Mr. Campos being shot, there was also a maintenance worker that presented himself on the 32nd floor, and Mr. Campos prevented him from receiving any injuries.
Sheriff, do you think the suspect's engagement with Mr. Campos maybe sped up the timeline of the shooter?
I would not make that assumption. I'm not privy to that.
there's actually two questions.
What was Mr. Paddock doing before the shooting? Is there any evidence that he was gambling that same night, or do you have any video evidence of what he was doing?
We have a pretty comprehensive timeline prior to the shooting, but more importantly, it's up in the public forum. He was gambling the night before. I do not want to disclose his actions up to the shooting because that's part of the investigation.
To end Mr. Paddock's actions, what caused him to stop shooting out the window? Do we know?
We do not know at this point.
And then to follow, you have said earlier you believe he had an escape plan. Do you still think that?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a matter of discussion out there, whether what I said is accurate or not, and what I am comfortable with saying is what I believe. Mr. Campos, or not Mr. Campos, I'm sorry, the suspect, I don't want to say the suspect's name, I will call him the suspect. We know that he attempted to shoot at the fuel tanks. We know that he had some personal protection equipment in the room. We know that the car that was down in the parking garage still contained binary explosives. So I would be comfortable in saying, which I believe, depending on the splash he made during the shooting, would it enable the first responders to be directing their attention in other locations, which would enable Mr. Paddock to just leave the hotel. And we do not know whether he had planned to cause additional harm outside of what occurred at Mandalay Bay.
Was there ever a trigger mechanism found that would have led to the car?
A trigger mechanism.
We talked about finding electronics in the room. We talked about
Oh, you mean something that would no, the explosives were not set up in order to detonate with a trigger.
Sheriff, is it your belief?
Yes, ma'am.
Did the security guard, and when did the police know that the security guard was shot? Before the gunshots at 10:05 p.m. or only after the active shooting began?
They weren't aware of him being shot until they met him in the hallway after exiting the elevator.
Sheriff, when did he check into the hotel?
What medication?
And what date did he check into the hotel?
Best of my recollection, we have information on the 25th. I had told you previously the 28th. We're trying to confirm his actions between the 25th and the 28th. I'm under the belief that he was not occupying the room between those days.
What medication specifically was he taking?
I already said that, ma'am. I can't answer that question now.
Can you address specifically, you said that you don't want to say the suspect's name. Can you just briefly talk about why that is?
Why? Because I don't want to sensationalize his actions. I believe if he doesn't have a name, nobody can relate to him.
Sheriff?
Yes, sir, in the back.
In recent days, we've heard reports about cell phones found in the suspect's room. How many cell phones were found, and was there any sort of indication that he might have been communicating with anybody?
Aaron, do you have that information?
I don't think it's prudent to give that out.
Okay, no, we don't have that number. I don't know the number personally.
Sheriff, you mentioned that something about how you had observed his movements over 200 times in the valley. Can you talk about where he was going, what he was doing?
No, I can't reach. I wish I could give you a comprehensive timeline and his movements. That would assist us in developing possible witnesses. but we're still running that down. It's still a really comprehensive evaluation of all the electronic equipment associated with this individual, and that's going to take quite some time. What I am proud of is how far we've gotten to this point. And yes, I'm frustrated. If you look in the public media, the perception that I am frustrated at the speed of this investigation, yes, I am. It isn't because nobody is not doing their job. It's because this individual purposely hid his actions leading up to this event, and it is difficult for us to find the answers to those actions. And that's why it's important for you to give me some deference, the FBI some deference, and the police department some deference to the ability to run out these leads. Now, I have noticed in the public forum several assumptions, unconfirmed statements, and actions of this individual put out there, and it makes it very difficult for us to follow the leads that we currently have when we're trying to chase our tail in other directions. And I have said this to you before, I appreciate all your help. You're a force multiplier for us because there's a lot of hidden pieces to this puzzle, but there's also a happy medium associated with that. And I will answer Mr. Ritter's question. That will be the last question.
We learned yesterday that the FBI went again to the Mesquite house. Did the FBI also go back to Reno, that house there, and the vehicles? Are we recombing? Perhaps you can tell us if we're recombing evidence.
Yes, we are. The question was, is the FBI, along with LVMPD, revisiting the crimes or the personal property of the suspect? Yes, that is accurate. Along with the behavioral analysis detectives, they are also present, and maybe we can discern some additional evidence as a result of that revisit. Okay, thank you very much. And like I said previously, we anticipate the next press conference to be Friday. Barring any key evidence that we become aware of, we'll plan on Friday. Thank you very much. All right, well, welcome everybody. I'm obviously Joe Lombardo, Sheriff, Clark County, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. This press conference will probably be a little bit different than you experienced earlier. It's going to be more informational versus Q&A. So my intent today is to provide some clarification on some outstanding issues out there in the public forum on reference timeline, fuel tanks, a couple other items. And then I'll provide the opportunity for SAC Rouse of the FBI to address the audience, and then we'll have a closing of the conference. Okay? And a couple of these items I will read from the narrative because I don't want my comments to be construed or changed. So I wanted to ensure the accuracy of that. But most of this conference will be done strictly through my narrative provided to you. Okay? Okay, first and foremost, I want to give you an update on the injuries. All right, well, welcome everybody. I'm obviously Joe Lombardo, Sheriff, Clark County, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. This press conference will probably be a little bit different than you experienced earlier. It's going to be more informational versus Q&A. So my intent today is to provide some clarification on some outstanding issues out there in the public forum on reference timeline, fuel tanks, a couple other items. And then I'll provide the opportunity for SAC Rouse of the FBI to address the audience, and then we'll have a closing of the conference. Okay? And a couple of these items I will read from the narrative because I don't want my comments to be construed or changed. So I wanted to ensure the accuracy of that. But most of this conference will be done strictly through my narrative provided to you. Okay? Okay, first and foremost, I want to give you an update on the injuries. This has been a big deal on my mind, as it has been the public, and I think it's important for you to be given an accurate picture of what is occurring associated with the injuries of the 1 October event. So as of 8 o'clock this morning, I was updated with the most current numbers. And let me back up just a minute. You know, in the early throes of this tragedy, I had advised each and every one of you that items of information were going to change. The dynamics of this investigation is far-reaching, it's wide, it's huge, and you can't expect exact answers in the early throes. My intent in the early throes were to give you the information to provide that calmness in the community to ensure that we didn't have a second player or a third player out hiding in the community intending to cause us harm. So there was no integrity question associated with that, as I've experienced through the cyberspace, questioning my integrity. I provided you the information as I knew it, and everybody in here knew it was going to change. So we will get through that. I'm not giving you 100% satisfaction associated with what I'm going to give you today, because I think some of that's going to change. And we will not know that until we're completed with this investigation. So back to where we were. I think it's important for the community of Clark County to realize we use 17 separate medical facilities to accommodate the injuries associated with this event. And that speaks volumes for the medical community here in Las Vegas, in Clark County. And it seems to be lost in the narrative associated with this, that it was strictly a public safety, fire, and police event. No, it was including the medical community. And I think it's important for me to give them their due respect. So 17 separate medical facilities. Today's numbers, 546 reported injuries. 501 of those have been discharged. In other words, they responded to a medical facility, they were treated for their wounds, and subsequently left to seek a healing process wherever they chose to do so. 58 is still the number of individuals that have died. Now, this is the important piece. 45 individuals are still hospitalized. Some of those are in critical condition. So 58 may raise. By the grace of God, it doesn't. And we shall continue to move forward. The medical profession will provide all the medical care necessary, but sometimes it's people meet their demise outside of our control. So I'm hoping that number does not raise, but today's number is 58. The fuel tanks. I'm going to read this narrative so my words do not get changed, but I want to provide you some information in reference to the fuel tanks. It is believed the fuel tanks were fired upon with intent. McCarran's leaders have safety protocols in place which they re-examine following any safety-related incident. The leaders have already contacted experts in fuel storage out of the abundance of caution. I am more than confident that they will immediately implement any changes or security augmentations if they are so advised. I have been advised there is a very low probability that aviation fuel could be ignited by gunfire, and the tanks are outfitted for continual release of vapors. So that is the situation of the fuel tanks. Any future information that needs to be provided, reference that, will be provided by the Public Information Office out of McCarran Airport. The dates of the 25th versus the 28th. This was not breaking news, no matter who believed it to be so in this form. We were aware of the discrepancy of the 28th versus the 25th in the early parts of this investigation. What we weren't aware of is why the date of the 28th was utilized in the early portion of this, as I was provided this information as part of the person registered in the suspect's room. We have come to learn the suspect did occupy the room on the 25th, and the situation on how the room was compensated or paid for had changed, and the name as part of the registration had changed on the 28th to include Mary Lou Danley. So that was the confusion associated with that. No matter what the perception is, whether we were being non-transparent or we were attempting to be subversive, is false. I was acting on the information at the time I was provided it. The autopsy. Yes, there has been an autopsy performed on Mr. Paddock, or the suspect. In the early evaluation, there was no abnormalities observed visually. As a matter of practice in the forensic science, his brain has been shipped to an appropriate evaluation facility in order to take a microscopic evaluation of the brain. So the initial report that there was no abnormalities was a visual inspection of his brain. So it's yet to be known whether there is any abnormalities to be presented at a later date. Now the timeline. Unfortunately, a great deal of my investigators' time has been preoccupied on this timeline. In the public space, the word incompetence has been brought forward, and I am absolutely offended with that characterization. This is a very dynamic event, very big event. Thousands of people involved, humans involved in documentation, and every venue of information involved in this investigation. So, the information was obtained via security logs, Officer Campos himself, body-worn cameras, hotel cameras, lock interrogation, my dispatch, LVMPD dispatch, hotel and private cameras, and interviews. So imagine bringing it all together to ensure that we are drawing an accurate picture. So I'll provide you a little more information on that. I still stand by the time of 21:59, 9:59. It's important that you continue to listen to me. 9:59 is important. It wasn't inaccurate when I provided it to you. The circumstances associated with it is inaccurate. Okay? I am very well aware of the MGM statement provided yesterday. I agree with their statement. I'm not in conflict with their statement. But here's what I will tell you. We were provided the time of 21:59 as a human entry into a security log. Through investigation, we have determined that Mr. Campos had encountered the barricaded door adjacent to the suspect's door at approximately 21:59. In his attempt to gain entry to the 32nd floor, he required him to ascend to another level and eventually make access to the 32nd floor. He went to the doorway that he was dispatched to originally to address the open doorway. He mitigated that situation and subsequently received fire from the suspect. When you culminate that timeline associated from the initial 21:59 to the 22:05 timeline that we are still stand by as the initial volley of fire, Mr. Campos received his wounds in close proximity to 22:05. He attempted to relay that information via his radio. And it was confirmed because he also relayed that information via his cell phone. So the timeline associated to both of those sources have been verified. 2205, the number that was provided earlier, referenced the majority of fire upon our community. We still stand by that time, and that was done by the combination of different sources that I listed for you earlier. 2217, 12 minutes. That is when our officers first arrived on the 32nd floor. 12 minutes. You are very well aware the suspect fired at approximately 10 minutes. Upon our arrival on the 32nd floor, the firing had ceased. We did not believe we had continually had an active shooter. At that point, we conducted evacuations of the rooms adjacent to the suspect's room, and you know the rest. So there is no conspiracy between the FBI, between LVMPD, and the MGM. Nobody is attempting to hide anything reference this investigation. The dynamics and the size of this investigation requires us to go through voluminous amounts of information in order to draw an accurate picture. My intent, like I stated earlier, is to give you information as I know it, unverified, to calm the public, not to establish a legal case. Everybody understand that? No question, sir. Now we're going to get into future of the investigation. I don't want to put a percentage of responsibility associated with this investigation because it would not make sense, but I'm here to tell you we are standing hand in hand with the FBI in the continuance of this investigation, in the beginning throes of it and in the continuance of it. Our portion at LVMPD has become contracted. My concern was the initial safety of the community, whether we had any other bad actors out there that we had to address, and I feel confident there are no other individuals intending to cause harm to our community associated with the 1 October event. Now it's become protracted, and that's where the FBI has their expertise. We are establishing the timeline of the suspect's life, his motivation, and everybody else associated with him throughout time. It requires us to rely on the FBI's resources for that success. Nobody's acquiescing in my department to this. I am not acquiescing, and nor is the FBI coming in with a hammer and attempting to take over. This will continue to be a joint operation. With that being said, I want to give the opportunity for Aaron Rouse to provide some statements.
Thank you, Sheriff. I am Aaron Rouse. I'm the Special Agent in charge for the FBI in Las Vegas. In support of our partner, from the beginning, we have established a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week command post with agents, analysts, task force officers, and many support personnel. We have deployed over 200 employees from across the FBI to Las Vegas, including many with specialized positions. Globally, we have hundreds of agents covering every facet of this investigation. Nothing will be overlooked. We have made significant progress. To date, we have found no signs of ideology or affiliation to any groups. Hundreds of interviews have been conducted so far. Close to 2,000 leads have been covered so far. Extensive review of digital media on a multitude of devices is ongoing. Over 1,000 pieces of evidence have been collected and are being reviewed by the FBI laboratory. Hours and hours of video footage from hotels continues to be reviewed. FBI victim specialists from across the country are here assisting victims and families of the victims. More than 1,800 victim questionnaires have been completed, and the return of personal property continues. We continue to ask you, if you have factual information in furtherance of this investigation, please call us. If you know something, say something. The number is 1-800-CALL-FBI. The FBI, nor our partner, we don't rush to conclusions. We ask for your patience and will not comment on specifics of this investigation while it is in process. This is in keeping with the long-standing FBI tradition. As I said from the beginning, this is our city. It is your city. Las Vegas is a resilient city, a microcosm of a resilient nation. While we grieve as a community, we will use that energy to learn as much as we can about this horrible crime so that we may prevent another one from happening. I thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. So before we close out today, I want to provide you another written narrative. I want to read verbatim in support. In other words, bring a better light to what's occurred and the carnage that is associated with our community. There's some bright spots, and I don't want anybody to take offense when I've completed my comments today. There's 1,000 heroes out there, but I'm going to bring it home to my department, and I think it's important for you to hear it. So, the first narrative: in the immediate aftermath of the shooting, Sergeant Garrett Everett arrived at Reno and Haven and saw the need for medical triage area. For hours, Sergeant Everett and other LVMPD officers, along with the off-duty nurses, paramedics, and firefighters, triaged at least 50 gunshot victims. They ran out of tourniquets and began using anything they could find to stop the bleeding, to include their own hobble devices they used during normal course of their duties. These officers calmly took care of the wounded and the dying as they waited for medical transport, at times placing the critical victims on the backs of trucks so they could get them to the hospital quickly. Not all the victims made it out as the night wore on. Those same officers were assigned to guard the deceased victims, not allowing any of them to be left alone. So the undersheriff and myself, Kevin McMahill, took it upon ourselves to go out and visit some of my officers yesterday to discuss their mental state, to thank them, and check on their overall condition. These particular officers sustained some substantial wounds, and some of them you have heard in the public forum already, and some you haven't. But there's a couple key individuals I want you to write about. And one of them is Brady Cook. Brady sustained 4 separate gunshot wounds. And when I say separate, that's entries and exits. It's not actually 4 separate bullets. And an important piece on Brady is the suspect was firing upon the crowd. As our officers started to arrive via vehicles, which Brady was occupying one, it is readily apparent to me that he adjusted his fire and directed it toward the police vehicles. So the response of those individuals, I believe, saved lives. No matter what his personal vendetta is against the police or not, maybe he was preventing the wolf from getting to his door sooner than later, but he chose to fire upon the police vehicles. Brady sustained a substantial wound to his shoulder, through his bicep, into his chest, and out his back. And the reason why I bring this one up, he asked me if he could go back to work today. Samuel Whitwer. Excuse me for my emotion. Samuel was laying on his couch with a very intensive wound to his leg. During the melee and his attempt to evacuate victims, he sustained a broken leg. But he remained on scene and provided security for the medical personnel. So at this point, I want to thank the community. I want to thank you for letting me be your sheriff and Vegas strong. Thank you. And today we're going to talk about a preliminary investigative report. So before I get into the narrative, if you're wondering what this is it, I just brought it along as a prop today, and you will have access, and you will know how you will have access as we go through this. So good morning. I'm Sheriff Joe Lombardo of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I realize it's been 3 months since you have received an update on the 1 October shooting. As you can imagine, this is a complex, contracted, protracted investigation, and we have done a lot of work trying to piece together what happened. Following this press conference today, we will be providing all of you and the public a preliminary report of the investigation. I will take a few questions, but I anticipate I will be directing you to the report as it will probably answer most of your questions. To date, investigators have gone over nearly 2,000 leads and looked at 21,560 hours of video. As we knew going into this investigation, it would be labor intensive, and we would require an enormous amount of man hours, as we are still not done. Today's press conference is about the release of a preliminary investigative report prepared by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Forced Investigation Team. Questions arose early on in this investigation as to why the homicide unit was not doing the whole investigation. Immediately upon the scene becoming static, our investigators separated the work taskings to ensure we would have the appropriate amount of resources assigned to each crime scene. Homicide was determined to be the primary in regards to Route 91 scene, and the FIT team was determined to be primary in regards to the rooms at the Mandalay Bay and Mr. Paddock. Both scenes included the assistance of the FBI. The release of this report is not standard practice in which LVMPD releases information regarding its criminal investigations. We would not, as a practice, release a preliminary investigative report, but this is a unique circumstances. Let me stress, this is a preliminary investigative report. In no way is this report comprehensive, nor does it encompass every facet of the investigation. It gives the reader cliff notes that are based on the facts of 1 October written by the detectives that investigated this shooting. The comprehensive, complete investigation will not be completed until sometime in the near future. An important piece on this, not all names associated with response to the report or the incident are included in this preliminary report. That was by design. It will be included, all names associated from my police department and every other public safety entity that responded and participated in different aspects of the event will be included in the comprehensive report. Due to the size and scope of this case and the community's desire to know information relating to the 1 October shooting, I am going against normal protocols and releasing this information now. We are talking about the largest mass shooting in the history of the United States. The men and the women of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the other federal, state, and local enforcement officials that assisted in this investigation are to be commended. The contents of this report include, but are not limited to, the sources utilized in the investigation, An overview of the incident. The sequence of events beginning on September 17th, 2017, when Paddock checked into the Ogden, located in downtown Las Vegas, and ending when officers made entry into Paddock's rooms. The sequence in this report, or the sequence timeline, is based on numerous sources. Early on in this investigation, in the press conference, there was controversy about timestamps. That controversy will continue to take place. Timestamps are provided by the Mandalay Bay, by human sources, and various other sources to determine the exact timing associated with each officer's actions and the suspect's actions. 2159, that was provided previously. We are still utilizing that time more closely to 2200. And as you do your research, you would see what I'm talking about. A listing of 58 deceased victims. A listing of total injured will be provided in a completed report. For informational purposes today, we are aware of 422 individuals that suffered some form or fashion of injuries associated with gunfire. In total, we have determined there is 851 individuals injured directly related to the 1 October shooting. Also included will be a brief overview of Stephen Paddock. Also a detailed account of the actions which took place on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay. Descriptions of the Las Vegas Village venue and the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay. Items of evidentiary value recovered from various scenes. Preliminary findings from the investigation to include certain indicators of intent revealed by Stephen Paddock's actions leading up to October 1. Public venues and other locations researched by Paddock, and some scene photography or photographs. This report is not going to answer every question or even answer the biggest question as to why he did what he did. What this report will shed light on is the planning of the attack, the research that was done by Paddock in looking for public venues where crowds gathered, Paddock's movement in the days leading up to the attack, and based on witness interviews and evidence, how Paddock carried out the attack. You will see in the report Paddock's disturbing search history from his computers to include extensive search history of ballistics and SWAT tactics. You will see that we recovered numerous photographs of child pornography. And as to the missing hard drive that was mentioned in previous press conferences, we have yet to determine when the hard drive was removed. It could have been in close proximity to 1 October, or it could have been years prior. We are unable to locate it. As you will read, there was no suicide note, nor a manifesto left behind. No ideology or radicalization was discovered. We hope that the work continues to be done on this case and will eventually help paint a more complete psychological picture on why Paddock committed such evil. The results of the autopsy, the toxicology, and the pathology will be provided by the coroner's office. It's not a matter of public record. I realize there's litigation currently associated with the coroner's office reference this matter, but any information referenced those 3 items will be provided by the coroner's office. I can tell you that the men and women of the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit are working tirelessly to provide answers as to why, but that as long and detailed process, we are all going to have to be patient and let this investigation run its course. I know and believe there was only one suspect who killed 58 people and injured hundreds more. All the evidence recovered in this case supports that theory. There was one shooter in the 1 October massacre. There was only one person responsible, and that was Stephen Paddock. We do not anticipate charges being brought forward against Mary Lou Danley. As to any other people, the FBI has an ongoing case against an individual of federal interest. I will not be able to elaborate on that statement as because it's a pending investigation. Any further information reference that individual can be provided by the FBI. It is my hope this report will provide the media and the public an understanding of what occurred on 1 October. Before I close, I would like to address an issue a number of you have raised about changes to our police radio system. And specifically, if this will affect your ability to listen to our radio traffic. This change has been in the works for 2 years. 2 years. No relation to 1 October. It will enable our department to go on the open market to purchase end-user devices such as pack sets and radios. We are no longer having to rely on a single proprietary vendor. Subsequently, it will save the department money. It will also allow us to update our radios over the air via the internet versus manually manipulating them. It will also allow our undercover units to have encrypted channels for safety. The press will continue to have access to all our calls for service associated with the patrol division. At the conclusion of this press conference, a report will be made public going to the LVMPD.com website, and we will also send follow-up press release along with a link to this report. As a reminder, the mission of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department is to make Las Vegas the safest community in America and the safest resort destination in the world. You have my word, and this is my goal and focus as the Sheriff of Clark County. We will learn from this incident and do everything in our power to prevent something like this from ever happening again. I'm happy to answer some questions. Yes, ma'am.
Are you guys still rolling out any type of terrorism connected with this?
Yes, ma'am.
On that note, do you have a message for Representative Scott Perry, who went on national television last night to say there was evidence, that he had evidence that ISIS may have been involved?
I'd like to see the evidence.
Sir, do you have any information to suggest that one of the bullets that was fired by one of your SWAT officers in the 32nd floor Mandalay Bay hotel room struck Stephen Paddock's body?
No.
Sheriff, in your last on-camera interview, you talked about some of the potential reasons why this happened. You said the report did not have why or a motive in this case, but you said that he was a narcissist, he was status-driven, and that that may have been a determining effect on what he did. Do you still believe that that is part of the reason why Stephen Paddock?
I'm comfortable with saying yes to your question. I put out in the public space that he had lost a significant amount of his monetary wealth in close proximity to 1 October, and that may have a driving factor associated with it.
So status,
Is that what you,
I just want to clarify.
Hold on, Ken, I'll get you next.
So status, losing money, you think that is a potential motive in this case?
It could be. Could be. Like I said, the behavioral analysis unit of the FBI, who are the experts associated with the mindset of individuals of this type, are still in their throes of the investigation. And they anticipate an answer, not in the near future, but in the future.
To sort of follow what she said and then to what I was trying to get to, does health play an issue, play a role in what you just addressed?
No, we're not aware of any health issues.
You mentioned something earlier that piqued our interest. Preliminary findings of intent. Can you elaborate on that for us, please?
No, I can't.
Sheriff,
Sorry, Ken.
Metro's been criticized about the flow of information with the shooting. What would you say to critics about that?
Well, I don't understand why they would criticize us. If you look at experience and other police departments across the nation and are willing to disclose information associated to this type of investigation, I think we've been out front. My primary concern is not the media. My primary concern is the safety of the public. And I think we have been more than accommodating with the information associated with this.
Was there any that Mary Lou Danley will not be charged in this case?
I'm sorry.
You mentioned that Paddock's girlfriend, Mary Lou Danley, will not be charged in this case, but then mentioned that there is someone that is still being investigated. Can you give us any more information on?
No, I can't. And that's part of the recent litigation in the court where we attempted to remain, the affidavits associated with certain search warrants to remain sealed. And that decision is going to be made by the court here shortly, but I cannot give you any more information to that.
The attorney had mentioned that in the case.
Yes.
In 60 days, there could be a potential arrest or charges coming. Is that the case?
That's still the case.
And Sheriff, that's one individual they're talking about?
Yes.
Were there any warning signs, anything, whether it was at Mandalay Bay or any other locations, or someone he had a personal relationship with, any warning signs where someone could have spoken up to law enforcement?
No, and the answer to that question is contained in the report.
Sheriff, what kind of contemplation took place before you actually decided to release today's report?
That's a great question. For those of you that didn't hear it, what kind of contemplation took place prior to my decision to release this report? It was intensive. I've lost a lot of sleep over this. This is outside of the normal protocol. And the reason why I did it, and the reason why I directed the investigators to do it, is because of the public interest. It's no secret the size and gravity of this event. And I think it's a public service, important for the public to feel calm associated with this event, and that we are doing everything we can to find a solution. And it isn't directly related to the criticism that I've received or my department's received associated with it. I think it's record-setting. It's a watershed event to release this report. But like I said in the early part of this, it is not going to be a matter of protocol. It will not continue into the future. It will be based on individual cases.
Was the FBI okay with you doing this? Did you talk to them? Did they say?
Yes, I've talked to the district attorney, I've talked to the FBI, I've talked to everybody that you would imagine in the law enforcement community and the prosecution community as to the soundness of my decision to do this, and they were all in agreement.
Sheriff, the FBI is not here today, nor is the district attorney.
That's by design. I asked them not to attend.
Sheriff, Mary Lou Danley, I know a lot of people have questions about her. Is there, and just some confusion, is there any evidence, has she been on any surveillance at Mandalay Bay during this day or the days before?
That question is answered in the report.
Is the report that you guys are releasing different than the after-action review?
I'm sorry?
Is the report that you guys are releasing, is that different than an after-action review?
Yes, the after-action review is more encompassing to all the public safety people that responded, and whether we were lacking resources, whether we had overconvergence, and what we can do better in the future. So Rachel, I'm glad you asked that question, because it's three different issues. You have the preliminary report provided by the FIT investigators, and by the way, the two primary FIT investigators are here, the Sergeant Jerry McDonald to my right, and Detective Trevor also. They are the authors of the report. So you have the preliminary investigation provided by FIT, you have the information that's going to come forward provided by homicide, and the information that's going to come forward provided by the FBI and the ATF. That will be in the complete comprehensive report. I don't anticipate that comprehensive report to be complete until probably near the end of the calendar year. And then you have subsequently have the reports provided by the coroner, and then we have a report provided by the behavioral analysis unit. So they're all associated with disparate timelines, but this report here, I think, provides you the information that you need to know whether there's any other actors associated with this event and whether we are ever going to find out why he did what he did.
How close is this report to what you believe will be the final report?
Can you clarify the question?
This is a preliminary report, but there
Correct.
will be a final report. I think the FBI mentioned maybe in a year from the event.
Yeah, similar to if you use Sandy Hook as an example, their report came out 4 years after the fact. Is almost 5, but this report we anticipate will come in close proximity to the end of the calendar year.
And so the preliminary report you think will be very close?
It'll be close, but voluminous. The comprehensive complete report will be voluminous, and that'll include a lot more information, in particular like crime scene photographs and things like that. And you get into the specifics of individuals by name who were involved, witnesses and officers and everything else associated to their actions.
I have to ask last question from you. Is the person that is being looked at, is it for aiding and abetting? Is it for
I can't, I appreciate it and I understand your zest to get the information to those questions, but I cannot provide it because it's under federal grand jury disclosure rules.
Sheriff, looking back, I guess my question is, why was the decision made for FIT to investigate the crime scene in the hotel as opposed to homicide? You could argue that they do this every day and they could have perhaps processed the scene since that is what they do every day and they have such a great solve rate and so much experience with that. So my question is, why did FIT take over that part of the investigation?
Well, the answers were in your questions. We were, as I stated earlier, this is a very heavy, intensive, resource-driven investigation. We had multiple crime scenes, and we have limited resources in all those units. This is something we have never experienced before. But more importantly, the suspect was dead. It wasn't like it was a continued active investigation outside of any other players. The crime scene was static, and as Craig mentioned earlier, there was an officer-involved discharge of his weapon, and that's what FIT is an expert at. They conduct all the investigations involving our officers-involved shootings. They are very robust investigators. They're very competent investigators, and that's why the decision was made to do that, because the accidental discharge was in Mr. Paddock's room. And so the decision was made to bifurcate the investigative resources in order to conduct a complete investigation. And I'm very proud of what they worked. They were very competent and they did a fantastic job. And that's why we did what we did.
Has the policy changed now, and would FIT still be the unit to investigate in a similar case like this?
Well, I don't know. Hopefully we never have a similar type case, but that decision will be made at the time.
So no policy changes?
No policy changes.
Sure. At Mandalay Bay at the hotel, it would seem to be one of the early trouble signs would have been the breaking of the windows on the 32nd floor. Do we know when those windows were broken?
I don't have the exact timeline on that, but I will refer you to the report.
Does the report also include what time Mandalay Bay contacted Metro?
Yes.
And one more question. Did you determine what made Stephen Paddock stop shooting?
No, and I have said it publicly, and I'll stand by it. I believe he believed the wolf was at the door. He believed that we were in close proximity of engaging him, and he decided to take his own life.
Did he have capabilities to continue the rampage, as in all guns, some guns working in ammo?
He had the capability, and you will see that as evident in the report. All right, Ricardo, thank you. And that was the last question with Ricardo. I appreciate everybody's time, and hopefully this will quell the zest for information. I know there will be a continuance of a zest for information, and we will provide it as we seem appropriate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sheriff.